Welcome to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, also known as
Negros.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And I don't know about you guys, but this episode, I want to do some real science. Like, we don't ever do science on this show, so I'm thinking about science. What do you guys think?
I called Bill Nye. He's coming. It's going to be in studio.
That's not real science. But first, let's check do we have anything in the news, recent news, or has it been?
I got some fake news.
All right, fake news. I love fake news.
A previous guest of ours called me and told me that a meteor the size of a bus hit somewhere. And I was like, but like, really?
That would have been really big if that would have happened.
I was like, just recently, like today?
Like killing people?
Couldn't find anything on it, so I don't think it happened. But
Yeah.
if we get hit by a shockwave,
The recording will
minutes,
stop. So, and I was kind of serious about the science. Like, while I was preparing for this show, this is cool. Like, we've talked about synchronicities before. And this was a total synchronicity because I've been thinking, like, you know what? I want some of those, like, scientific studies, you know, the really amazing ones where they do, like, a double blind on, you know, whether or not somebody can read people's minds or whatever. But I haven't come across any of those in a while, and I was just thinking, like, while I was doing show prep for this, I was thinking, like, man, I would really like to come across them because I love talking about those kind of studies and the implications of them. And it just so happened that, like, I was listening to a podcast, and, like, right after I was thinking of that, two of those got talked about on the podcast. I was like, holy fuck. Like, that's a synchronicity. So anyway, these were actually pretty cool. And it's Dean Radin. And Dean Radin is famous for doing these kinds of badass studies. So the first one, and he's actually looking into magic now, okay? You guys all, you know Dean Radin. You got, vaguely?
I don't remember the name at all.
Okay, he's well, like, slight introduction for him then. He's part of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is basically like he specializes in looking into shit that science thinks is not even worth looking into because it's not real. Okay. In other words, he always looks into, like, parapsychology, like, can people read people's minds? Can people predict the future, right? So on this particular one, he's kind of gotten on the magic stuff, and what he tries to do, you'll see this if you look into his studies. What he tries to do is he starts with, like, really simple stuff that is kind of everyday world shit. So he was like, so what is everyday world magic that people do? And he thought of, like, blessing food, right? A lot of people will kind of, you know, even if they're not particularly religious, will sort of bless food or sort of, like, you know, do a little prayer or meditation before they eat, right? Mm-hmm. So he thought of that, and he was like, well, let's find out if there's actually any kind of positive effects from this, okay? So he got chocolate, and he said it was like these big coins of dark chocolate, like the kind, you know, where, like, looks like a silver dollar or whatever, and which chocolate has caffeine in it, right? And he was like, so the idea was he took a bunch of these chocolates and he split them in half. The show observer just posted a picture of a bus and a meteor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right. So he got all these chocolates and he divided them in half, and half of them he had blessed by three different groups of people. One group was just like regular, you know, I guess you would think of, like, Christian people who pray over their food before they eat, right? Mm-hmm. But the idea was he was like, so, like, in your blessing, the intention is that we want this food to be, we want these chocolates to sort of give people an extra boost, right? Because like you said, chocolate has caffeine in it already. So if you eat the chocolate, you're gonna get a caffeine boost. But he was like, so sort of like try to bless it in the sense that make it even more powerful. So he got these people to do it, and he got a set of I can't remember the specifics, but it was some Buddhists and some Tibetans who were like professional meditators who have been doing it all their lives, and he got them to do it too, to bless it. Okay, and then he mixed them all up or whatever, and then he basically, you give like the person who doles them out. Okay. Oh wait, we're getting more information on the meteor. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah,
all
maybe
right.
this is what he was talking about, because he said that NASA. Okay.
All right, you read that. I'll keep going on this. So basically, the upshot of it is that a bunch of people got chocolate. Some of the people got chocolate that wasn't blessed, and some people got chocolate that was. Okay, the people getting the chocolate didn't know which one it was. Mm-hmm. All right, and then he looked at the results, like by basically asking them, you know, how did you feel after getting the chocolate? And statistically, because he did it a bunch of times, statistically, there was a much greater effect from the blessed chocolate of getting a boost from it. Okay, so he was like, that's interesting. Okay, now keep in mind that sounds like bullshit, but keep in mind it's double blind. Like the people getting the chocolate didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And the person giving them the chocolate didn't know which chocolate was what. He did know what was going on, but he didn't know which one was what. So
yeah.
That's the double blind, right? That makes it double blinded from the people who are giving the test results. And then he said that when he was gathering the results, him as the person gathering the results, he also didn't know which chocolate they got. So he wasn't affecting by his pre-knowledge what they were saying, right? So he said technically it's a triple blind, but he's just calling it a double blind. So after that test, he was like, well, that's really interesting. So then he went with tea. Okay, so he was like, let's do tea. And he, in this instance, the people getting the tea did know that there was a possibility that they were getting blessed tea. Okay, but they didn't know that this was a big test. Okay, all they were told was like that the tea might be blessed by a Tibetan monk or whatever, you know. And what was interesting, he said about that, was that the people who got both the blessed tea and thought they got the blessed tea, because they didn't know which one it was.
Yeah.
So when they got the blessed tea and they thought they got the blessed tea, that the effect was like 1,000 times over what if they just got the blessed tea and thought they didn't get it. And it was it was like way above what they got if they didn't get the blessed tea and they thought they didn't get it, right? But even then, there was still the bump because tea has caffeine. Okay, so I thought all that was really fascinating. Like,
yeah, that's cool.
So that kind of shows you the magic, and then there's this magnification effect of intention. So like you have the magician, the person blessing the food, right? And they're doing their magic on the food. But then if the person receiving the magic also thinks they're getting the magic, then there's this magnification effect of the magic itself. Like that's fucking badass.
But it's like I would say that most religious people, spiritual type people, like they don't like the idea of magic. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But so to me, it doesn't matter. Like
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
When I think about magic, I think of that I guess communicating with the spirit realm and affecting things in the physical through that avenue is still it's basically the same thing.
Right.
Like,
he takes like care to define what he says is magic. And magic is basically what you just said. That there is some like unexplained parapsychological effect.
Yeah.
Right. However it's happening, whether it's happening through spirit or God or your pure intentions, and because the Tibetans are bad at
I guess that's probably came about because like the pagans sort of like believed in sort of magic or whatever, and so they thought that
and there is the fact that like there's the dark side of anything. Like I think about this in terms of because people are like, oh, we can't, like, there's the idea of like the forbidden technologies. Like we don't want to go down that road with genetics because there's all these bad things, right?
Drawing that vape pretty loud there.
You guys here got a new vape? It's fucking good. Yeah, sorry if that's distracting, but you're gonna be distracted.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. So yeah, like with any technology, there's a good side and a bad side, and what matters is what you do with it, not the technology itself, right? So with magic, there's a really bad side, because if you think about it, like the ability to make food be awesome just by wanting the food to be awesome, think about the bad side of just that. Like,
see, I went
like
to
sit down and curse that food.
I went to Chick-fil-A with Ty, and he swore that he got poisoned because I made a joke that the chick at the counter did not think was funny, and Ty laughed. Ty laughed.
There you go, folks. Real world examples.
And then he got sick, and I was like, dude, how could she have poisoned your food? She was not dealing with your food, but she could have cursed it.
Yeah.
So basically,
Because
what
your
happened
joke
was,
pissed her off.
right? They asked me my name after I made
said
my order.
Nabu.
That's right. She goes, "What's your name?" I said, "Nabu." She goes, "What?" I said, "Nabu." And she's got the pen. She's got to write it down. And Ty starts laughing.
Nabu. How do you spell it?
I don't know if y'all have ever seen that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, but the main character, his name is Nabu.
Yeah.
Nabu.
Nabu. That's our favorite name to use when they're, at Starbucks and they're like, name? And you're like, Nabu. Watch them like try to figure out how to spell it.
Yeah, so maybe that's what happened, because he swore up and down like that he was poisoned because he laughed at the joke. She did not think it was funny.
Oh, so she thought he was laughing at her expense.
But I don't know.
And so
She just didn't laugh,
Oh.
right? She just did not think it was funny. I thought, and Ty's behind me laughing.
Yeah.
He thinks it's funny. And so
Oh,
he
man.
thinks that she poisoned him. But I think maybe click knob you. And Brett's trying to spell it.
Show observers got it figured out. Click knob you. Nabu.
I think that's what happened, Ty. I know you're out there listening right now.
Yeah, you know.
She
who
cursed
are,
you. She didn't poison you. She just blessed your food in a bad way. Dear Lord of Darkness, please make this food make this man sick.
Dear evil gods. Yeah. Oh man.
No, I didn't order a sandwich. Ty ordered a sandwich. I just ordered some chicken nuggets or whatever. And they were not good.
Oh man.
I ate them all, but I didn't get sick. I was just like, man,
Yeah.
I'm not going to come back here.
There you go, Snake Bros.
I'm sorry, folks. If you like Chick-fil-A, I'm totally cool with Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A is great, but
And it's probably the last place that somebody's going to do a dark god curse on your food. So I don't really think that's what happened. But Ty just swears he got poisoned. So I'm just saying, don't make name jokes over there.
yeah.
It's too risky.
All I'm saying is, like, once again, from Snake Bros, you get a real world example. Maybe it's the polar opposite, but you get a real world example of the science we're talking about on this show. Chick-fil-A is not going to sponsor us ever. Probably not.
I appreciate your concern, Show Observer, but they're definitely not ever before this episode ever happened.
Anyway, that's some good Dean Maiden science and some bad chicken cursing.
But dude, I totally think that there is, there is something to that. Like, okay, there are areas that you can go with that type of stuff that I think is just kind of ridiculous. Like the people that have the special water bottles or whatever that they write all over the outside. Like they write. Okay, so they'll have a bottle and they'll write all of these like feel good. Oh, who's foxing me right now?
It's probably Ty.
No, it's Brenner.
No.
My bad.
What's up?
My bad, folks. You gotta turn the volume down. Total amateur move. Anyway,
I did it last time.
So they'll have a water bottle or something, and they'll have all these like good intention type words like love, peace, happiness, blah blah blah, and they'll write all this kind of stuff all over the bottle. And it's like whatever the contents of the bottle sort of
absorbing these.
absorb these good feeling, this good intention, and so it's supposed to make it healthier
Okay.
for you to put that stuff into your body.
Okay.
So it is this, thinking of it in a form of magic, like if you were writing a spell on the out, you're
Yeah.
actually
I've got you.
there's. So maybe it's the intention.
Yeah, that's. I think that was what Dean was getting at too. It was that it was intention. But
I just always thought that stuff was silly. I'm like, how do you know that peace is a good thing?
Right.
Like, peace
Yeah,
might be
freedom.
really bad. War is good. War makes us free.
yeah, war is good if you're the people about to get killed because of peace. But okay, so
Just got to be careful what you write on your water bottle.
that's right. With war, maybe, just not all the time. But okay, so what I would say, because what you reminded me of with that, what I immediately thought of was this. There's a Japanese scientist. He did this with ice crystals, so it's water, okay. But he did this with his. So with his students, he had this experiment where they. He had this way of. I don't know exactly how he did it, but I guess he was making like microscope slides. So he'd put a little drop of water and then you'd compress it between the slide, right? And then you just put it inside of a container, so it was sitting like this, and then they put it in the freezer. But first he labeled it, and he used the beautiful, the kanji, the beautiful Japanese, what would you call it? Calligraphy.
Calligraphy, yeah.
Where he painted this gorgeous symbol on there that meant love or happiness or fellowship or whatever. Just and some of them were bad. He put hate and anger, okay, but one for each slide. Just and it was not like you were saying in the bottle. It's like peace and love and happiness and purple and pink, right? No, just one per slide. And then they put them in this big freezer where you could kind of see through the glass, and they let the ice form from the droplet of water. Right, and each one's different or whatever, but like he said, so every day, when he was explaining the test, he said every day as his students were coming in to the classroom, they were all instructed to look at each bottle and read the symbol. Just not try to focus hate or love on it, just read each symbol carefully, take a second for each one. And like, they were showing the crystals that were made and the concepts that were on each one, and I'm like, holy shit, this is badass. Like, hate was all fucked up and it didn't have any symmetry at all, right? But love was just fucking beautiful.
Whoa.
So like that really blew my mind. I was like, oh my god.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and that's just ice. Okay. So what is it?
Brett found it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Masaru Emoto's water crystal experiment. Okay, so he said that water was a blueprint for our reality, and I'm reading from what Brett has posted for us. And that emotional energies and vibrations could change the physical structure of water. His water crystal experiments consisted of exposing water in glasses to different words, pictures, or music, and then freezing and examining the aesthetic properties of the resulting crystals with microscopic photography. So he made the claim that water was exposed to positive speech and thoughts would result in visually pleasing crystals being formed when that water was frozen, and that negative intention would yield ugly frozen crystal formations. And like when I was looking at it,
Okay.
that's exactly what I thought. I was like, holy shit. Like the ones that had positive messages were just fucking beautiful. Now, okay.
Yeah, you want to do some real science though? That's like trying to claim that the solid state of that material, what it looks like, represents what's going on with the liquid state. There is no evidence whatsoever that is true. So people writing all that stuff on their liquid water.
You're right.
And
again, we're talking about
freaking
crystals.
liquid here.
Yeah, we're talking about crystals.
Right, that's solid state.
So
technology.
water, you're right. Water's like flowing.
Just, yeah.
Solid state technologies. But I've ever since I saw that, I was just like,
No, that's really cool.
That's amazing.
That is.
But
that's really
again, he was freezing, like quite literally freezing the intent or the whatever you would call it, the energy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel stupid using all these new age words, but they're the ones that have ruined the words. They're the right ones, right? This energy of whatever the concept is. So if it was beauty, right? Let's get away from peace and love, right? So beauty, like this gorgeous ice crystal is formed, and then you look at like hate or anger, and it's not even symmetrical.
Yeah.
Like that's
Because that shit's like irrational. It doesn't.
yeah. Well, you can think of reasons, but I'm just saying like the pure fact of that that there's this gorgeous one over here, and it, now if like, okay, you would like a pure skeptic would say, well, how do we know how many times he did this till he got the beautiful crystal and
Yeah.
So you would have to do it yourself. Obviously, you could just say you don't believe the guy's results. And like if I sit there and hate on some water droplet for a long time and it turns ugly, I'm not going to be surprised. Really? Like, would you be surprised?
What if you were hating on it for a while and it was beautiful?
Then I'd be like, my hatred is beautiful. And I had to go all emo on that shit.
But okay,
Some
so
black eyeliner on.
So like, I was like straight up. I just would think that stuff with the water bottle was just ridiculous,
Yeah, I'm not saying that is.
But I'm not. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I
bet you that whole concept came from this.
It might have, but the idea really is that, like, after I broke down this whole idea of magic being.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at. That's what you would have to do if the negative ones came out all beautiful. You'd be like, I'm making the world beautiful with my infinite sorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, show observer. Sorry,
But yeah,
I don't mean to.
like no, but thinking of language as a magic itself, and like the writing of it that's where we get the word spell.
Yeah.
It comes from the writing of language and the simple idea that you can make something happen inside someone else's spirit or mind or whatever you can cause like electrical pathways to fire, neurons to fire, and all this kind of stuff just by doing these symbols in row, a specific organization of symbols.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, you can make people cry, you can make them aroused, you can piss them off, you can do all kinds of stuff. So it does seem like some sort of like a magic.
Yeah.
Just the writing of it.
I see what you're saying, and kind of in a way that's almost more amazing than just the crystals.
Exactly.
Like, somebody
It's
can
like-
look at these scratches on a piece of paper and like weep or.
Right, and it can that exact emotion that they have was intended by the person who did the scratches.
Oh yeah, that is yeah, that's right.
So,
What was your story? You would tell this story of the like when we were talking about writing being magic.
yeah. Okay, so I gave this sort of example of like let's say go back to ancient history when writing and reading was not a common thing.
Right.
This was like very few people in the world used it, and most people never even saw.
Yeah, didn't even
writing.
know what it was. Yeah.
Did not know what it was at all, had no concept of it. So like, let's say you've got a kingdom, a castle, a palace, whatever, the ruler living somewhere inside some walled city. And then you have like some really low tier peasants outside the walled city. They're never allowed in. And then way out in the woods somewhere, there's this wizard sage guy, right, in his little hut out there by himself, right?
Yeah.
In a cave and whatever. He's got weird technologies.
Yeah.
They don't. So
I fucking love this example.
so let's say something crazy happens that the old man, the wizard, knows about. Like.
Wait, okay. It was you're as a peasant, you see something crazy and you run to tell the sage, right? Isn't that what happens? And then he gives you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's a perfect example. So like you're a peasant and you see some crazy shit in the sky, or you see you're out hunting and you see some group of people marching with weapons and stuff, and you're like, oh. So you run to this old man and you tell him, because supposedly he's a wizard.
Yeah.
And he believes you, and he brings you into his house, and he grabs a feather and he dips it in some weird black bottle of stuff, and then he pulls out this roll of something that you don't I've never seen.
Skin or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and he starts like scratching on it, and he keeps dipping it in there, and he's scratching on it, and he's scratching on it, and he's making marks all over this thing, and then he blows on it and does all this weird stuff.
Yeah,
and then
throw some sand on it. Yeah.
yeah, and then he rolls it up and then like heats up some wax and like puts a seal on it, and he gives it to you, and he says, take this to the city gates, show this seal to the man at the gate, and he will take you to the king.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the king, do not let anyone take this thing. You
Yeah.
give it to the king, and then when you give it to the king will then follow you. Bring him to me.
Yeah, the guy's gonna be
And
like,
the guy's
"What?
just like,
He's never even been let in the cities. He's
Yeah.
like, that's
just
crazy.
think he's freaking nuts, right? So he just does it anyway. He runs to the city gates, and the guards, of course, like pull out their spears, and they're like, "Get out of here!" And he holds up the seal, and they're like, "Oh."
Yeah.
And then boom, they open the gates and they take him to the king, and his mind is being blown. So then he gives the thing to the king, and the king opens it up and looks at it, and then his whole facial expression changes and everything, and he's like, "Take me with you."
Yeah. Guards, he calls a bunch of people, gives you a
Yeah.
horse, and then he's like, okay, go wherever, we're gonna follow you.
Like the guy is going to think this wizard just like totally took over the king's mind with a spell or whatever.
He's gonna think this is like the most amazing magic he's ever seen. And he did take over his mind.
That's
with a
right.
Spell.
He took over the king's mind with the spell, and the king did exactly what he wanted him to do. So
great.
yeah, that's my example of magic. So with that idea in mind, there is, the written language is a magic.
Yeah.
That's just the way I look at it. But
Yeah.
so I mean, I guess if I write all over my water bottle, maybe there is something.
Yeah, it seems lame, but maybe there is something to it, and maybe not, But just from like, okay, so people bless food. Yeah, people bless food. Why? Now there have been other studies, and Dean Radin talked about this. There have been other studies of just they're not nearly so rigorous, and they're not double blind or whatever, but just studies of people blessing food, who bless food versus people who don't, and then the nutritional value that they get from it. And they did this by measuring. They measure the nutritional value by, taking blood samples and everything, and like it's not like exact with every case, but over in a statistical universe, the food that was blessed, even if it's a 3 or a 5 second blessing that you say by rote memory, not something that you're sitting there focusing on, but the food that was blessed is more nutritional than not.
Yeah.
And so Dean Radin is like, so even if you're not religious, why not do this?
Yeah.
Again, you come back to like Pascal's wager. Why not do this?
I think we have just come up with a great idea for a supermarket. Right? It's like a supermarket that you hire these Tibetan monks and some
Yes.
guys and some Catholic priests and whatever. Every time you bring a shipment in, they stand at the back of the truck before they unload it, and they all just do their blessings on the food, and then they put it in the store.
Yeah.
And it's like, our food is more healthy.
Yeah, so this is another thing, like this is the last thing I heard him say before we were starting the show. He got invited, but think about this. He just got invited to speak by a big pharmaceutical company at one of their big deals, so he's basically like there, and he's like, well, what do you guys want me to talk about? And they're like, well, what have you been doing? And he's like, magic. And they're like, yeah. So pharmaceuticals wanted to talk about magic. So he was telling Gordon White, who was the guy who was interviewing him, he was like, so I'm going to go to this pharmaceutical thing, and I'm going to tell them, like, here's how you guys can make your pharmaceuticals like 20% more effective than any others. Just hire some Tibetan monks and have them freaking like meditate over your pharmaceuticals before you sell them. You don't have to tell anybody, but the tests will show that they're way more effective. It's like,
That's great.
yeah. So like, yeah. I don't know. Like, why not do this? Why not? Yeah. And just think about it. Like, people who, like, the Scriptards, they're going to hate this, and so they're going to not get as much nutrition as people who are just going to do it because, There's a kind of person who's going to be like, that's bullshit, and they won't do it, and they're going to, like, die unhealthy and
Yeah. So I had
shorter lives.
I had a rosary
Oh, yeah.
necklace, right? That my wife gave me. That she actually ordered from Italy, from the Vatican, and it was blessed by the Pope. And it's just always seemed more special than any necklace I've ever had.
Yeah.
No matter what. Like,
Okay, I got you, yeah.
It's always just had this thing where I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful looking and everything, but it's like,
So you're
There's-
getting both. You're getting both effects. It was blessed by somebody who does this for a living,
Like,
basically.
yeah.
And then you also know that it was blessed, so there's the magnification. So
Right.
It's like, oh,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like this thing is really special. and like powerful in some way.
Yeah. Have you tried stopping any demons with it?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
I ran through the motions. I learned how to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that kind of stuff is, and I mean, every religion has relics,
Yeah.
right? Now this is, we've only got a couple of minutes left in this segment, but this is like something to think about.
In the 30-second break.
That's right. Or forever, because that's what I'm going to do. Like, there are, this is, like, you just have to take my word for it, but you guys can look it up. There are what are called incorruptible saints. Now, once again, I don't know if this happens in other religions. I'm sure that it does. But specifically in Catholicism, there are bodies of saints, or even just nuns or priests who aren't, I mean, they usually get sanctified if this is found to have happened, but their bodies don't decay. There are some that are on display that are like, they do not decay, okay? And like, now again, you have to believe whoever or whatever, but like, when you look this up, there's too many cases of this where so like they're gonna flood or an area's gonna get flooded, or they want to move the church, whatever, so they got to move the entire cemetery that's around it, right? And one of the bodies they dig up is one of the nuns from nearby, or maybe a priest or whatever, and they look like they did when they died, and they died hundreds of years ago. There's zero decay.
Yeah.
And they usually will end up encasing those people or whatever, and you know, that's like, what the hell is that? What's going on there? You know, what the hell, you know? And another thing I just found out about this is one more thing to think about in terms of this kind of this idea of religious. There is a nun that's known as the bilocating nun, okay? And the place that she bilocated to, and this was like this was in the colonial days or whatever, was a place that much later had a huge UFO sighting.
Hello.
That's like famous.
What is bilocating?
Bilocating means like you're in two places at the same time.
Oh.
Bilocation, right? So she was known to be in this church in England or wherever she was in Spain. And, you know, so maybe I'll look this up over the break and come back and give you guys a little bit more detail. But basically, she was known to be in this one place, but she was also in another place, like verifiably speaking to people there or whatever, you know. And then so much later, the records come together, like, wait, how is this nun here in New Mexico, but also in Spain?
Everybody knows she had a secret twin.
Well, what's also interesting is one of the most famous UFO cases of all time, which, you know, we don't do much UFOs on this show, but like one of the most famous UFO cases of all time also happened in this same place.
Yeah.
The same little town in New Mexico. It's I think it's called the Socorro case. But it involved a police chief who freaking chased the thing out into the desert. So like he was a really reliable witness and all that kind of stuff. And it's really strange. So, incorruptible bodies, aliens, and nuns. I don't know.
Yeah, that's all cool stuff. But you know, just the UFO thing. It's like the problem I have with that is that it's just they're never identified.
If you kill me, another will take my place, and you will have made a target of yourself.
And with that,
sensible
we're going to take a break.
You should have no trouble in
And think about that. Maybe one day we'll have identified flying objects that aren't ours. That'll be cool, right?
Yeah.
So we'll come back in a little bit after this break. Thank you guys very much. Snake Bros.
Angels and Demons and Monsters and Brothers of the Serpent podcast. A relentless pursuit of pyramids by two Armchair theorists. Anyway, we're talking about
I love that intro. That was Relentless Pursuit of Pyramids by two
armchair.
theorists. That was great.
Yep. Back at it, hard at work.
That's right. So, are we ready to move to this topic, or do we? have
Yeah,
something?
no.
Okay, yeah.
I just wanted to say that the meteor scare that we had in the first segment was actually something that happened in 2017. And it was a near miss that went through space, almost 21,500 miles an hour. Was believed to be roughly the size of a bus and was thought to have passed between Earth and the Moon at around 4:56 p.m. No
date. Well, the date's there. But think about that.
no time zone specified. At a
Between-
distance of 139,433 miles.
Between the Earth and the Moon.
Yeah. It was close. I mean,
In a cosmic sense, that's
it's like, yeah.
you're bleeding, but you're not dying.
Yeah. Got grazed by a boat.
That's right.
But yeah, that was a while ago. So, yeah, it wasn't exactly fake news. It was just rehashed.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we can move on.
Okay, so we've spent a couple episodes talking about Zoroastrianism, and I was kind of trying to look more into this because the stuff that Brett and then Kyle brought to the table on this got me interested in it again. So I was looking into it, and I realized that Graham Hancock wrote quite a bit about it in his most recent book, Magicians of the Gods.
It's supposed to be
Yima.
general.
Yeah. So I was looking this up and pulling up some text from his book, and I'm gonna quote from that for a little bit here,
I do have the
because this led us down an interesting road in terms of ideas. So okay, exactly how old Zoroastrianism is has not yet been satisfactorily established by scholars,
I wins.
since even the lifetime of its prophet, Zarathustra, or more usually known as Zoroaster, is uncertain. Indeed, as Columbia University's authoritative Encyclopedia Iranica admits, quote, controversy over Zarathustra's date has been an embarrassment of long standing to Zoroastrian studies, unquote. The Greek historians were among the first to address themselves to this matter. Plutarch, for example, tells us that Zoroaster lived 5,000 years before the Trojan War, which itself is a matter of uncertain historicity, but generally put at around 1300 BC. Thus, 5,000 plus 1300 equals 6300 BC. So this is like pre-Sumer already.
Right, yeah.
A similar chronology is given by Diogenes, who relates that Zoroaster lived 6,000 years before Xerxes' Greek campaign, which puts it at about 6480 BC. Okay, so those are two pretty close dates, given the distance. So you got 6300 or 6480 by two different guys. So that's just like information on the possible, like how old it is. Like, because I would say that most Zoroastrian studies consider it to be a lot younger than that. But the Greeks are putting it as way back there. Okay. In the Zoroastrian scriptures known as the Zendavesta, certain verses in particular are recognized as drawing on these very ancient oral traditions. Speaking of just like oral traditions that go back before any writing whatsoever. The verses speak of a primordial father figure called Yima, the first man, the first king and the founder of civilization, and they appear in the opening section of the Zendavesta known as the Vendidad. There we read how the god Ahura Mazda created the first land, the Ariana Vaeo, and forgive me on these pronunciations, by the good river Daita as a paradise on earth, and how the, quote, fair Yima, the great shepherd, was the first mortal with whom Ahura Mazda chose to converse, instructing him to become a preacher. Yima refused. I don't want to. At which the god set him a different task. So that's the god talking. Since thou wantest not to be the preacher and the bearer of my law, then make my world thrive, make my world increase. Undertake thou to nourish, to rule, and to watch over my world. unquote. So to this, Yima agreed, at which the god presented him with a golden ring and a poniard. Now, how many ancient Sumerian drawings do you see where they're holding a ring and a rod?
Journey
Yeah.
room.
Okay. I thought of that immediately. I said,
But there's something else here too, because that's exactly what God supposedly gave to Solomon, right?
right. Yeah, a ring and a knife or whatever.
Yeah, I'll make you the king, so you get the scepter, and then you want wisdom, so here's a ring.
Right. And then there's the story of the, was it Manco Capac, the two guys who came up, the Incas, right? The same deal. They were given a spear and a ring,
Yeah.
and they're supposed to stab it in the ground, and
That's like also that is just the classic, items that a king has. He has, you
Yeah,
kiss
you
the
got-
royal ring,
that's right.
and he's holding a scepter.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So what do you think about the drawing of Inanna where she's holding two of them, two rings and scepters? Like, I mean, that drawing is supposed to show her as being in her war aspect.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're like weapons, almost. Anyway, so he gives him the ring and the poniard. Okay, and the poniard is said to be a long, tapered thrusting knife, inlaid with gold. Okay, significantly, for we will see in chapter 17, there are close parallels to this story, as far away as the Andes Mountains of South America, which I was just talking about, the Inca. So Yima then pressed the earth with the golden ring and bored it with the poniard. So he sticks the ring in the earth, and then he stabs the poniard down into the earth through the ring, okay? By this act, we learn that he, quote, made the earth grow larger by 1/3 than it was before, unquote.
Yeah.
Is this like
Sounds like an impact.
Fucking expanding Earth. Yeah, sounds like an impact. Yeah, yeah. A feat that over the course of thousands of years he repeated twice more, in the process eventually doubling the land area available for, quote, the flocks and herds with men and dogs and birds, unquote, who gathered unto him, quote, at his will and wish as many as he wished, unquote. So Graham Hancock goes on to speculate. There's only been one period where those parts of the Earth that are useful to humans increased dramatically in size, and that was during the last ice age between 100,000 and 11,600 years ago. In other words, when all this ice was freezing and the land was
Growing,
becoming exposed. Yeah. Indeed, previously submerged lands totaling 27 million square kilometers, equivalent to the area of Europe and China added together, were exposed by lowered sea levels at the last glacial maximum 21,000 years ago. While it is probably far-fetched to suppose that it is this very real increase of useful land, of which a great part was still above water at the beginning of the Younger Dryas 12,800 years ago, and I don't think it's far-fetched, but that he puts that in there because he has to. That is referred to in the Yima story, or that it has anything to do with the golden age that Yima's benign rule supposedly achieved. It is interesting to note what happened next. So this is what happened next. After another immense span of time, we read, Yima was summoned to, quote, a meeting place by the good river, where the god Ahura Mazda appeared to him, bearing an ominous warning of sudden and catastrophic climate change. O fair Yima, upon the material world the fatal winters are going to fall. That shall bring the fierce foul frost. Upon the material world the fatal winters are going to fall, that shall make snowflakes fall thick even on the highest tops of mountains. Which is it's kind of weird,
Yeah.
like, that's where they
Didn't snow back
Fall.
then up on the top of the mountains.
Therefore, make the Avara, which Graham Hancock says is a hypogeum or an underground enclosure. Avara, long as a riding ground on every side of the square, and thither bring thee seeds of sheep and oxen, of men, of dogs and birds, and of red blazing fires. Thither thou shalt bring the seeds of men and women, of the greatest, best, and finest kinds on the earth. Thither thou shalt bring the seeds of every kind of cattle, of the greatest, best, and finest kinds on this earth. There shalt thou bring the seeds of every kind of tree, of the greatest, best, and finest kinds on this earth, and so on and so forth. He says the seeds of every kind of fruit, of the fullest of food, sweetest of odor. All those seeds thou shalt bring, two of every kind, to be kept inexhaustible there, so long as those men shall stay in the Vara. There shall be no humpbacked, none bulged forward there, no impotent, no lunatic, no leprous. No lunatics! Okay, so, sound familiar? This is the Noah and the Ark story.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that along with saying to bring
With a little bit of prejudice thrown in.
and a little bit of eugenics. Only bring the best, just the best. But what I found interesting in this is that, or just one of the things, is that he says, while he's talking about seeds of plants, he also is saying seeds of animals and seeds of men, right?
Yeah.
Now, since in the same sentence, he's not like, okay, I would say that if he said to bring the seeds of men or whatever, and wasn't saying anything else, then you could say that that's a euphemism. But when you put seeds of plants, which anybody knows is an actual seed, and then you also say seed, use the same word, seeds of men or animals, and you don't differentiate between the two, then he means the real seed, which we're talking about genetics here, So already you're implying technology or magic, whichever one, which they're probably interchangeable, right? Okay. So thereupon came Angramanyu. Now here we go with the end of the world. Who is all death, and he counter-created by his witchcraft the serpent in the river and winter, and a work of the demons. Now there are 10 winter months there, and only 2 summer months, and these 2 are cold for the waters, cold for the earth, and cold for the trees. Winter falls there with the worst of its plagues. In other translations, the phrase, quote, the serpent in the river and winter is given as a great serpent and winter, and alternatively as a mighty serpent and snow. Okay, so with all the translations together, you get the idea that we're talking about massive cold and a snake from the sky.
Yeah.
Okay. The metaphor that is being repeatedly driven home here is that of the mighty serpent who springs from the sky down to the earth, who penetrates the earth, and who brings a prolonged winter upon the world so severe that it is dark, most turbid or opaque, according to some translations, at midday, and even the fleeting summer months are too cold for human life. Once again, the whole scenario seems very accurately to describe the terrible conditions that would have afflicted the world after the Younger Dryas comet spread its trail of destruction across at least 50 million square kilometers, brought on, quote, a vehement, destroying frost, unquote, and threw such quantities of dust into the upper atmosphere, together with smoke and continent-wide wildfires, sparked off by airbursts and superheated ejecta, that a turbid, opaque darkness would indeed have filled the skies, reflecting back the sun's rays and perpetuating something very like nuclear winter for centuries.
Yeah.
Okay. So, although it is certain that a number of carefully selected people were to be admitted to the Vara, perhaps as caretakers and managers of the project, and as future breeding stock, the emphasis throughout is on seeds, which in the case of human beings would be sperm from the males and eggs from the females. So when we read that the Vara is to be constructed in 3 subterranean levels, each smaller than the one above, each with its own system of crisscrossing, quote, streets, it is legitimate to wonder whether some kind of storage system, perhaps with ranks of shelves arranged in crisscrossing aisles, might not be really what is meant here. In the largest part of the place, so he's quoting here, in the largest part of the place thou shalt make 9 streets, 6 in the middle part, 3 in the smallest. To the streets of the largest part thou shalt bring 1,000 seeds of men and women, to the streets of the middle part 600, and to the streets of the smallest part 300. So, if it seems fanciful to imagine that we might, in an almost high-tech sense, be looking at the specifications of a seed bank here, then how are we to assess the other technological aspects of the Vara, for example, its lighting system? As well as making a door to the place, and sealing it up with the golden ring already given to him by Ahura Mazda, Yima is also to fashion, quote, a window self-shining within, unquote. Okay. When Yima asks for the clarification as to the nature of this self-shining window, Ahura Mazda tells him cryptically, there are created lights and uncreated lights. The former are, or let's see, the created lights are the uncreated lights are the stars, the moon and the sun, which will not be seen from within the confines of the Vara during the long winter. But the created lights are artificial lights which shine from below, is what it says. Yima did as he was instructed and completed the Vara, which thereafter, quote, glowed with its own light, unquote.
Yeah, it's like real similar to you're gonna dig that hole in that solid rock by turning the rock into clay like a potter's does. And then he's like, okay,
All right, I'll do that.
and so he dug the cave by turning the rock into clay like a potter. And potter uses on a potter.
Yeah, that's right. That accomplished, he then, quote, made waters flow in a bed a mile long, There he settled birds by the evergreen banks that bear never failing food. There he established dwelling places consisting of a house with a balcony, a courtyard, and a gallery. There too we are reminded, in accord with the commands of the god, he brought the seeds of men and women. So, and then quoting from the text again, there he brought the seeds of every kind of tree and every kind of fruit. All those seeds he brought, 2 of every kind, to be kept inexhaustible there, so long as those men shall stay in the Vara. And then finally we learn that every 40th year, to every couple 2 are born, male and female. And thus it is for every sort of cattle, and the men in the Vara, which Yima made, live the happiest life.
Yeah, so that's like, it makes sense that if you're going to do that, you need an instruction manual for how to survive down there without getting everybody sick and spreading plague and all that.
Yeah.
Which is what the rest of the freaking leftover Texas
exactly.
invested
They're like,
in.
well, how far from the water should we put the dead bodies? That's right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And Brett's question was, what is Elon Musk going to find when he searches to make his tubes?
Yeah. With Boring Company.
That's right. His boring company.
Yep. That's in the future it'll be like and so the prophet Elon Musk asked the god, well, what shall I do? You shall form Boring Company.
Musk, you shall be boring for the rest of your life. And so it was. He became boring. Okay, so let's see if I quoted from the book anymore. I don't think so. Okay, so the first thing that okay, so here's more quotes from the text. All right, so as well as a climate catastrophe in the form of an overnight reversion to peak ice age cold, we also know that the Younger Dryas involved extensive global flooding, as a large fraction of the North American ice cap melted and then poured into the world ocean. It is therefore noteworthy that the Zoroastrian texts speak not only of the vehement destroying frost of a global winter, but also of an associated flood accompanied by heavy precipitation, in which, quote, every single drop of rain became as big as a bowl, and the water stood the height of a man over the entire earth. On the other side of the world, and much closer to the North American epicenter of the cataclysm, the Popol Vuh, an original document of the ancient Quiche Maya of Guatemala, based on pre-conquest sources, also speaks of a flood and associates it with, quote, much hail, black rain and mist, and indescribable cold. It says, in a remarkable echo of the Zoroastrian tradition, that this was a period when, quote, it was cloudy and twilight all over the world. The faces of the sun and moon were covered. Other Maya sources confirm that these strange and terrible phenomena were experienced by mankind, quote, in the time of the ancients, the earth darkened. It happened that the sun was still bright and clear, then at midday it got dark and sunlight was not seen again until the 26th year after the flood. 26 years of darkness.
Half of 52. Just saying.
Returning to the Middle East. The famous account of the Hebrew patriarch Noah and the Great Ark, in which he rides out the flood, commands attention. It is obvious that there are many parallels with the story of Yima and his Vara. The Vara, after all, is a means of surviving a terrible and devastating winter, which will destroy every living creature by enchaining the earth in a freezing trap of ice and snow. The Ark, likewise, is a means of surviving a terrible and devastating flood, which will destroy every living creature by drowning the world in water. In both cases, a deity, Ahura Mazda in the case of the Zoroastrian tradition, and the god Yahweh in the case of the Hebrew tradition, intervenes to give advance warning to a good and pure man to prepare for the coming cataclysm. In each case, the essence of the project is to preserve the seeds or the breeding pairs of all life. So then he quotes from from the Bible here, and of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind. Of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. Easily missed but noteworthy is the fact that Noah's Ark, like Yima's Vara, is to have a window, and is to be closed with a door, and is to consist of 3 levels. A window shalt thou make in the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it.
That's freaking awesome.
Last but not least, there are hints of a lost lighting technology in Noah's Ark that parallel the references to the artificial lights in the Vara. In the Legends of the Jews, Louis Ginsburg's remarkable and comprehensive compilation of ancient stories and traditions connected to the Hebrew Bible, we read that the whole journey of the Ark, quote, during the year of the flood, unquote, was conducted in darkness both by day and night. And here he quotes from the text, all the time it lasted, the sun and moon shed no light. The Ark was illuminated by a precious stone, the light of which was more brilliant by night than by day, and thus enabled Noah to distinguish between day and night. And that kind of reminded me of the legendary, like, Viking sunstone, sort of, too. You know, like the sunstone that allowed them to navigate. Okay, so Turkey's Cappadocia region has a very large number of ancient underground structures hewn out of solid rock, and usually, like Devara, consisting of multiple levels stacked one atop the other. These underground, quote, cities, unquote, as they are known, include the eerie and spectacular site of Daring Kuyu, which, this is Graham Hancock, which I was able to visit in 2013. Lying beneath a modern town of the same name, 8 of its levels are presently open to the public, although further levels remain closed off below. And astonishingly, a subterranean tunnel several kilometers in length connects it to another similar hypogeum at Kamalki. Entering Daring Kuyu was like crossing some invisible barrier into an unexpected netherworld. One minute I was standing in the bright sunshine. The next, after I had ducked into the cool, dank, and dimly lit system of tunnels and galleries, no self-shining windows now, only low-wattage electric light, I felt I had been transported to a realm carved out by mythical dwarves at the dawn of time. In places, the tunnels are low and narrow so that one must stoop and walk in single file between walls stained and blackened with ancient smoke and overgrown here and there with green mold. Now, keep in mind that the smoke is from, like, later on people hiding in there. Yeah. At regular intervals, slid back into deep recesses, I passed hulking megalithic doors shaped like millstones, 5 to 6 feet in diameter and weighing close to half a ton. These giant round doors that could roll across
wheels.
Yeah.
Stone wheels.
These were clearly designed to be rolled out to block access. Stairways and steep ramps led down from level to level, and although all the levels were interconnected, the rolling stone doors could be used to isolate them from one another when needed. A remarkable system of plunging, sheer-sided ventilation shafts connecting the deepest levels with the surface, and doing so to such good effect that the gusts of fresh air were still palpable 80 meters or 260 feet below the ground. So they're still getting fresh air gusts and everything from these, like the ventilation's so badass. In some places, the passageway I was following into would debouch into a junction where tunnels branched off in several directions, and more stairways led down into even lower levels. And here and there, now to one side of the passageway and now to the other. Sometimes accessed by means of holes cut in the wall, sometimes through full-size doorways, lay small, low-ceilinged grottos in which even a few people sitting together would have felt cramped. But sometimes those doors would lead into interconnected networks of chambers and passages, and sometimes they would open out into suddenly lofty halls and spacious rooms with barrel vault ceilings looming high overhead, supported on monolithic columns hewn from living rock. The whole place, in short, is a complex and cunning labyrinth on an immense scale, a work of astonishing architectural complexity that would be impressive if it had been built above ground, but that is utterly breathtaking when one considers that it had to be chiseled, mined and hammered, cut and gouged out of the volcanic bedrock, which it wasn't. They turned it into clay, and they just,
Yeah.
Later, studying the plan, I realized that this vast hypogeum, looking in cross-section like a gigantic rabbit warren, and extending over an area of more than 4 square kilometers, lay underfoot wherever one went in the modern town of Daring Kuyu. So anywhere you go in the modern town, this whole massive network has been...
Where is all the stuff that they took out?
Right. The floodwaters got rid of it.
Yeah, I guess
That's
so.
what I said.
There's none. It's not anywhere.
That's right.
Crazy.
Yeah. So streets beneath streets, room beneath rooms, a secret antipodal city of unknown antiquity and of unknown purpose, but certainly the product of an immense ingenuity, determination, and skill. And Daring Kuyu is just one of 200 such subterranean complexes, each containing a minimum of 2 levels, with around 40 containing 3 levels or more that have been identified in Turkey, just in the area between Kayseri and Nevşehir, known as Cappadocia. 200 complexes like this. Most recently, in 2014, workers preparing the ground for a new housing project at Nevşehir, an hour's drive north of Daring Kuyu, stumbled upon yet another unsuspected hypogeum. Archaeologists were called in, and it was quickly realized this one was bigger than any of the others so far known. As Hasan Yunver, the mayor of Nevşehir, put it, Daring Kuyu and Kamalki are little more than kitchens when compared to this new site. It is not a known underground city, added Mehmet Ergun Turian, the head of the Turkey's Housing Development Administration. Tunnel passages of 7 kilometers and more are being discussed.
That's insane.
Naturally, when the discovery was made, we stopped the construction we were planning to do in the area. Several commentators immediately speculated that the newly discovered site might be 5,000 years old, but there is no basis for this, or really any date. All we can say for sure is that the earliest surviving historical mention of Turkey's underground cities is found in the Anabaptist of the Greek historian Xenophon, which I don't know if I'm saying that right, written in the 4th century BC 44. So they are older than that. Okay.
That's just freaking awesome.
200 complexes like this, and the newest one that we know, 2014, the newest one they found, is so big that it makes Darren Q look like a kitchen, is what he said.
A 4-kilometer complex looks like a kitchen.
Right, and he's like, this is the one I was talking about before, where that, like, down at the very bottom there are these tunnels going off in every direction.
Yeah.
And he said that at the time they were saying that one of the ones they tried to explore, they got 7 kilometers down and they turned back. I'm like, you turned back? What?
Ran out of food.
My torch is going out. So here's another. This is
That's a flashlight. It's a tool.
It's freaking British. So this is another interesting thing that I found out in some of these complexes. In a lot of them, the upper levels, quote unquote, the ones that are closer to the surface, have no chisel marks. So most of the upper levels, like, you have to get down really deep to, like, some of the outskirts warrens to find chisel marks. And to me, that implies that people have expanded on it later on by digging more rooms and tunnels and stuff like that. But the original construction, they didn't use chisels, so there aren't any chisel marks. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
What
it's
kind
not-
of rock is it?
It's volcanic.
So it's like,
So okay.
I mean,
so this is what I know. With Darren Q specifically, the rock is so soft. Okay, not soft, I should say. It's so, like, brittle
it's like pumice or something.
that maybe it's like pumice. But the point is that it's not very stable. So the fact that the place survives at all is amazing. Like, in other words, that, you think, well, it's soft, so it's easy to dig. But no, this makes it a really dangerous construction.
Yeah, but it's still there.
And and it's 12 levels deep at least, and it's still there, and it's thousands and thousands of years old. So, like, whoever did it they fucking knew what they were doing.
Yeah. And these are the ones we were looking at with, like, like Ahura Mazda and the wing standing out of the, it's like carved into the wall and stuff.
Yeah. All that stuff is either near the entrances or in the cities above. I don't know specifically if there's any Ahura Mazdas down in the tunnels.
Okay.
But yeah, the evidence is that we got the same guy there telling the persons to build these varas. But here's the thing. This reminded me of the Hypogeum on Malta.
Yeah.
The Hypogeum on Malta is the same. You've got this massive, multi-leveled, like, unexplainable, strange, Now there are interesting, like, acoustical things happening on the one in Malta, but maybe the guy was like an artiste, maybe he was a musician, who knows, right? But in Malta, you have the same deal. Like, it's multiple levels deep. It's enormous. It could hold thousands and thousands of people. And in fact, it was found with the bones of thousands of people in it.
Yeah.
So, and then there's another Hypogeum on Malta that, remember when we were first talking about this, I was like, they found another one nearby, and they were like, oh yeah, it's kind of the same as the other one, you don't need to see it, and they closed it off.
Yeah.
Well, that one wasn't full of dirt and bones.
Right.
So what I thought was that there are at least 2 varas on Malta. Oh yeah. Like, look at the area. Look at these weird. So Brett is putting up pictures. Yeah, it does look like water washed clay. These are not the underground cities, but those are some of the pictures that come up. And it's all these weird cone shapes. We'll put it in the show notes. These weird cone shaped things that are very strange. And then, like, some of them look like they've broken off or whatever, and there's all these tunnels all through them. It's What is the like? Why is the land shaped like that? Look at that.
I don't know.
They look like
Never seen any erosion like that before.
yeah, they look like drip castles.
Yeah.
If you guys have ever gone to the beach and made sand castles out of like by dripping wet sand, that's what they look like, kind of. These weird cones of like rock and mud. And then there's all these tunnels carved out of them. Anyway, so what I was thinking was that if all these, okay, so in Turkey, in Cappadocia, there's all these cart ruts over top of these of the place where Darren QU is. There's like in the area, basically, not directly over top of any particular city, but in this big wide area where all these underground cities are cut. On the surface are just shitloads of cart ruts all over the place.
Right in the stone.
Right.
Like in the solid stone.
Directly in the solid stone. Now you go to Malta.
And they call them cart ruts, but they're just doing all this crazy,
Yeah, and
it
they're
doesn't make any sense just that was where they drove carts for thousands of years. It just doesn't.
right.
It doesn't.
Yeah, and a lot of them have really thick, perfectly flat bottom.
Yeah.
Like they were actually using all-terrain tires or whatever, or I don't know, spheres. There's some. I'm gonna try to find this picture. It's somewhere on Graham Hancock's website, where there are these two like pristine ruts going through this like perfectly smooth rock, and like up at the edges where the ruts stop, you see this like perfect wave pattern. It looks like splashes as something was going through really slick mud. Like if you imagine a wheel rolling through mud, and it's like throwing up these little splashes along the edge. I mean, like it's clearly something rolling through something that was wet.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes the stone into the clay.
Right. That's the other
for the potter's wheel.
That's the other possibility is that. But so, reading the descriptions, okay, I started to think of like what they were saying, that the rain droplets were the size of bowls and full of mud. Mm-hmm. Okay, so imagine you're Yima or whoever, and you've dug these underground cities, and the cataclysm is happening. The rain is happening, and on the other side of the Earth, this comet is impacted in North America. Okay, and the clouds are coming across, and like ejectas dropping, and these huge rain droplets are falling, and they're throwing mud everywhere, and you're running around in your vehicles trying to get the last few pieces of supplies and people into your underground things before this enormous wave comes over and covers everything in a different kind of sediment. So you see what I'm saying? You have mud being put, like really wet mud being put down by rain, and you're making cart ruts in it like crazy, going all over the place trying to get everything, and then you close the doors, and then this wave comes and drops a different kind of sediment and protects those cart ruts for thousands of years.
Yeah, I would have to. I mean, if the mud was that sloshy, it would have to be a really non-destructive laying down of sediment on top of it in order to preserve it.
Yeah. I don't know how exactly it would work, but like you have to imagine that the ruts were protected somehow.
Yeah, unless they were actually whatever it was that made them actually turned that part of the rock into mud.
That's true.
Like the text says, like this is how you're gonna dig this tunnel. Just turn this rock into moldable clay.
Yeah. So maybe they were experimenting with it. I don't know. Who knows?
I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, it's not a bad theory.
So
I'm just script ripping.
If you have a vehicle, who goes like, I'd rather drive in mud.
Yeah.
Like, than on rock. Or maybe you're making ruts for some particular purpose. Like you want automated system. I don't know, but it's weird because they go everywhere.
But he also like makes a fake river and all this kind of stuff. It's like they do go everywhere. Yeah, I know.
But yeah, you're right. It's possible. I was just thinking that like I was imagining because of kind of the crazed way the ruts are. I was imagining people like zooming everywhere in their vehicles trying to get the last.
Yeah.
As the fucking huge
and it could have been like they're doing that, and then they get underground, and then it was volcanic ash that fell on top of it instead. You know. But go on with your. We're almost through the segment, so finish your whole.
Wow, I've taken that long. Okay, so like the Hypogeum is on Malta. The surface of Malta is covered in the same kind of ruts. Well, not to say it. It's covered in cart ruts. So, if you see like ruts in Cappadocia and like massive underground cities underneath it, and then ruts on Malta and massive underground cities there. So the next question we were asking is like, does this mean that like that ruts on the surface is a sign that there might be massive underground warrens beneath
See, that's why that to me is a good theory, and that implies that whatever gave them the ability to cut all these caves and massive cities is what is cutting the ruts.
Okay.
That's why I'm making that connection.
I was thinking that like the cataclysm is global and it's dropping mud all over the planet and making ruts in the mud. But yeah, it doesn't matter. It just seems to me if we have two places with massive underground things and there's ruts all over the surface, then maybe that's a sign.
Yeah, I got
and there are ruts in the Azores, like Brett just pointed out. There are ones in Mexico. There are ones farther west in the United States. I'm not exactly sure where. I think there's some in Utah near Moab. There might be some farther north, Oregon Trail. Okay, there are cart ruts in the United States.
Yeah.
And,
there's
and in Mexico, and there's no known giant, massive, except that there's lots of legends of giant, massive underground cities.
Yeah, like the ant people.
Yeah, exactly.
They took was it the Hopi?
The Hopi.
Down into the massive underground city.
Right, that's right. And they still down there. And like, if you had long heads, wouldn't you call them ant people, maybe?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, now think about this. One of the hypogeums on Malta was found with non-stratified, like all the rooms were filled 2/3 full of non-stratified sediment that contained the bones of up between 9,000 and 30,000, whoever, depending on who you talk to, individuals, many of whom had elongated skulls.
And animals, right?
Yeah, there were animals and all kinds of shit in there. So that sounds like a failed arc to me. The tidal wave came and the entrance failed. Now think about that. The bones were disarticulated and dismembered, and in no particular order. In other words, like, and if it was an enormous tidal wave, it would have turned the interior into this giant blender, basically.
Yeah.
And then a long time later, when everything calms down and the people of the other hypogeum,
Well, it wouldn't even have to turn it into a blender. It could just kill everybody by drowning them.
well,
It's getting,
but the skeletons were all dismembered. They weren't connected to each other. Like, you had a piece of an arm and you know what I'm saying? None of them were contiguous in full skeletons.
I guess what I'm saying is that by the first cataclysm kills them all by drowning, then they decompose, and then 53 years later, there's another inundation.
Oh yeah.
And it's bringing more sediment and breaking up all the bones and all the, it's like, because there were multiple ones apparently.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
just
yeah.
happens.
Yeah, there would have been multiple
Jubilees
waves
and-
just in the first one. Shit.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I was
you're
just
right.
saying, like, you 52 years for all of the decomposition to take place.
and then it comes and mixes the
more,
bones.
stirs all the bones with more sediment and just.
But it could have been a blender, man.
I know. It's,
All the rooms around, right? So anyway, yeah. You're probably more right than I am. I was just thinking like of this, because you see the submarine movies and right,
yeah.
and the water comes in and anyway.
But it could have been a blender,
It could have been
man.
a person blender. Come on. Yeah, and that was, I don't know. I was just kind of like, when I was thinking about this, I was sort of
Yeah, the failed arc idea is cool.
and emphasizing with the people of the other arc who like eventually they surface and they must have been wondering where are the people from the other one? They know it's around there somewhere, but they have no way of finding it because the directions are all changed. The planet's been spun around. The magnetics are
Or
changed.
maybe they stayed down there because, like, they had, it was inexhaustible as long as they stayed.
That's true.
So they, there's supposedly evidence of multiple cataclysms, like pretty much
Yeah.
one right after the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Stayed
Well,
down there for a while.
I think you get the idea from the Zendavesta that they were down there for generations because it was
Yeah.
like every 40 years a male and female is born to each couple.
Yeah.
That's, right there you got 40 years and it says every 40, so at minimum you got 80 years there.
Yeah. But we got to take a quick break.
Yeah,
and
we
we'll
do.
come back, keep talking about this and other things such as
Basically-
snakes.
Go dig in Moab. half our arcs tied behind our backs so we don't die. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Or maybe I should said half our arcs underground so that we don't die. So during the break, Kyle had a good point about the cart ruts and about like another piece of evidence that points to them not actually being ruts made in mud by vehicles.
Yeah, because it seems to me when you displace the mud with the tire or with a wheel, it pushes it to the side and up, and so you have raised sides on any rut.
Yeah.
Where the displaced material goes, it goes to the path of least resistance. It's not going to get pushed down.
Yeah.
So it pushes out of the way to the side and then upward. So you have like raised sides on any normal cart rut or a rut in mud.
Yeah.
And these are like real smooth. Now it could have been eroded, but it's like if there was that much erosion, you would see the erosion on the sides as well.
So
Smooth.
That's true. So the one thing I'm thinking of, and this only applies with a certain, and this is not disputing your point, but I just remembered this, that when debating people whether these ruts are, you know, the mainstream idea that somebody ran carts back and forth over these thousands of times until they dug it into stone. Right. Or they were actually made in something soft by wheeled vehicles. People have posted pictures of mud puddles, or you know, like, so you got a dirt driveway or whatever, and there's a big area where there's a mud puddle, and it's like the water's all dried up, but it's still muddy, and then there's vehicle tracks through that mud, and they've posted pictures of that, and then side by pictures of some sets of the ruts on Malta, and they fucking look.
Yeah, they do look a lot alike. Yeah.
So, but you still could be right. I'll have to go back and look at that. Like, are there raised lips on the mud, on the ruts in the mud that aren't present? You know, in other words, because what I've always looked at is the big picture. Like, yes, all these ruts in the mud look a lot like all these ruts in the rock.
Yeah.
But maybe there's minute differences. I'll have to check that out again. Maybe I can find some of those examples.
They just look to me like they were made out of solid stone.
So you're agreeing with the mainstream viewers here?
No, because
in the sense that it was made in rock, not.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if it was solid stone and let's say they were carts, like they're going along, but then there's ones that are crisscrossing it. So all of the crisscrossing before you have any defined lines would have to be exactly the same in order to make the same depth ruts crisscrossing in the same way.
Yeah.
And that just seems highly improbable that without seeing where the other cart went, because you're driving a cart over solid stone before there are ruts, that you would actually make that curve the exact same way, and this guy would crisscross yours in the same way, curving the other way, or
Yeah.
it just wouldn't happen.
Right.
So I don't think it was.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I don't think it was carts.
Right.
I don't think
it was
they're cart
vehicles.
ruts. No, I'm not saying it's not vehicles. Like what I'm saying is that whatever it was to me was meant to take the solid stone away.
Okay.
Like it was purposeful.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me that it looked like, because in Turkey, so many of them are like side by side. You were saying that it looked like somebody was actually scraping or they were mining material. I remember you
Or
telling me
something
that.
like that.
Yeah.
It looked like, and then there's that one that's like curving down, and the wall on the side is just like perfectly smooth in a curve.
Yeah, that's right. It's all scraped there. Yeah.
These just don't look like. I mean, they obviously look like cart ruts would in the bigger
Carts were
picture
like-
sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look like.
So one thing I've noticed that definitely makes them not vehicles in the sense we think of is that there's no place where, like, because we have four-wheeled vehicles, there's no place where you see the tires separate from each other like when you're in a turn.
Right.
So these have to have been two-wheeled, single axle vehicles because the turns are there's no places where the wheels separate from the turn, from the front wheels turning and then the back wheels getting off the track of the front wheels.
Unless they were every wheel articulated to
I guess
turn,
so.
then they would follow each other like a train.
Okay, so we have that the Bobcat that does that.
Right.
Does its tracks, they don't separate from each other?
Well, if they were perfectly aligned, which ours aren't. You know, I mean, like, because you can independently steer the back wheels, and so our front wheels to back wheel get off a little bit, and so they will make double lines. But if they're perfectly aligned, if they are lined up and they're turning the exact same amount, that they're gonna follow each other.
Okay, so it could have been 4-wheeler, or even 24-wheeler.
Right. So like trains don't do the crisscross thing when they turn.
Right.
But they can't. They have a radius that they can, a maximum radius.
Their wheels don't turn at all, right?
Well, the trucks do. So there's like a truck with 4 wheels.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And so that thing rotates underneath the car, and so does there's like a truck on the front of the car and a truck on the back. And so when it goes around a curve, both trucks turn. But also there's, you know, there's this other thing I read about train wheels that I better not talk about this. Just disregard everything I said about trains.
Well, people have suggested that these are, in a way, ancient train tracks, in the sense that you can automate.
Yeah.
But
They're messy.
right. But that's why they call like on Malta, the main section where there's thousands of them. That's why they call it Clapham Junction. That's the name of the main train junction spot in England.
Yeah.
It looks like, because people have posted the picture, like you see all these train tracks, and then all the car roads.
Try to switch that track on. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. Try to drive.
No way to tell which track you're gonna take if that's the case. You're just like, where are we going? Well, I hope we're going to Malta. But we'll find out.
And then you take the one that goes down into the bay.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the ones in Spain.
That's a tricky shadow. That's somebody's roof.
Yeah, somebody's roof shadow making it.
Anyway, I tend to think that whatever made them was designed to take away the solid rock.
Right. It wasn't specifically to make them, but it was designed to like mine material or whatever.
To get that solid rock out of there.
Because there's also cases where the ruts.
I'm not saying that it wasn't made to actually make them. I'm saying I don't know if it was being mined. It just looks to me like it was intentional.
Right.
Like the whatever did this was designed to take up the solid rock in that way.
I got you.
And then then it goes back to now you got all this labyrinth of caves and tunnels down underneath. So of course, whoever did that was really good at taking solid rock out of wherever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe those are the ruts of the machines, and they were pushing all the rock that they were getting from underneath there.
Or maybe they had this machine that would like the top. And then drive the machine back down, and so the machine's like making these ruts. But then they're turning it back into solid rock on top.
Yeah. As soon as you turn the beam off, it's like.
Yeah.
That's a really
so
good
idea. They keep coming up, and then it's like driving. Some of the rock is still a little soft, and you're going.
Yeah.
So maybe it is ruts. I don't know.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Seems like it should be raised. But
what about the raindrops of gold?
I don't know.
Bowls of mud, man.
All that stuff got washed.
Bowls of mud. Yeah.
So when the bowls of mud land on the solid rock, they go.
And we stay dead.
That would be a really funny sounding rain.
Man, yeah. Torrential rains all go. Time to close the ark. So, and this one thing that Brett pointed out when we were talking about this a couple of days ago when we were having this conversation are the Longview Grottos in China. This is another place where there are numerous massive underground passageways that have no explanation, where all the rock that was removed, which is like millions and millions of like cubic yards of whatever material is completely gone. Right. The entrances are small, but there's massive underground, multiple levels, and they all intertwine with each other in the rock, and there's no explanation for it. And they don't make sense as quarries, they don't make sense as mines, they don't make sense really as living spaces either, because the areas inside are too big. So what you have are these big rooms with the big pillars and everything, and then there's like little walkways and stairways along the side. So it's almost like you can imagine, and then they
Storage units.
right? And then they fill up with ice cold, perfectly clear water.
Yeah.
Now that may not have been the case pre-flood, post, because the water levels are different or whatever. So whether or not they filled up with water is immaterial. But if they did, that would be that's great storage. It's like ice cold, right? And if you have all these containers of genetic material in there, it's going to keep it cold or whatever. But even if it didn't, you can imagine the passageways along the sides, and then like the big interior spaces filled with racks of seeds.
Or it's like whatever containers they were the racks, because they're gone. So it's like pelican cases.
Oh, okay, I got
It's
you.
like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
You don't have to have racks because the case that's holding it is also the structure that is the rack.
Right.
So you just stack them up.
Yeah.
Like blocks.
Oh, the racks are made of bamboo.
Yeah. Bamboo
It
racks.
was in China. It's bamboo.
I want you to carve this thing out of solid stone and then build a rack out of this bamboo.
Hey, bamboo's great. Yeah. So, and if you look at the walls, they're like, oh, they were chiseled out, but look at it. It looks machined. The quote-unquote chisel marks on the walls of the Longu grottos are so regular. They look a lot like the machined walls of if you look at modern salt mines. Okay, you see the same. You can't. Oh, is it charged?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. That plug doesn't work. It sucks. Is it dying?
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
We killed it. Yeah, so the walls of the Longu grottos have this very regular pattern that really doesn't make sense as chisel marks because it's so regular, and it looks a lot like we have these enormous boring machines that have these big spinning plates with all these cutting teeth on the front of it, and it makes very similar marks on the cave walls. So
they look like tool marks. I mean, like a machine tool.
yeah,
So anytime you put, there's like all these different types of rasp bits that I would use in my drill press when carving on wood. Rasps. And depending on which one you get, like you put it in there, it makes its own pattern. Like every different one makes a different type of pattern when you're carving on the wood. You're just trying to whittle the wood down into a rough shape that you want, and you pick like one of the rasp bits that does that job. Not too much or not too little, just right for you. So like wherever you use that, it has, even though I'm like holding the piece of wood in my hand and it's not a uniform or machine-like motion, when I'm done, the whole thing looks, the pattern on it just looks pretty much the same, like all the way around, because of the teeth are just positioned just in the
they're
same way.
machined teeth. Yeah.
So even though I'm moving the block of wood randomly, the machine teeth, wherever they go, leave the same spaced little jagged marks or whatever on the wood. So it always ends up looking just like the entire wall of those caves. Like that's what it looks like.
There's a guy. I can't remember what his name. I think his name is John something. Or other, but he's in the forums on the Graham Hancock website, and he pointed this out. He said so. There's 3 types of tool marks. Okay. There's one where it's a hand-directed tool and it's hand-powered.
Yeah.
And then there's another type of tool mark that's a hand-directed tool, but it's a machine tool. And then there's another type of mark where it's machine-directed and machine-powered.
Right.
What was guiding the tool?
That's
right.
one of my favorite Christopher Dunn
Chris
quotes.
Dunn. That's right. Yeah. So that's about it. That's pretty much what we had when we came up with in this conversation about this, and I wanted to put all that out there. Like, think about this: that cart ruts may be a sign of massive underground caverns, and there are so many of them all around the world that most of them haven't been found. So
And the supporting evidence for that, not just the cart ruts and the hypogeums or whatever they're being called.
yeah, the hypogeum in Malta.
But that all of these different cultures from all over the world have these similar sort of flood myths where somebody was picked
Yeah.
to survive it and to bring with them all the important stuff. I and the ark is not a boat. It's always something that's preserving what was through the cataclysm.
Yeah, it's preserving the seeds.
And there's just like, there's so many.
Yeah, I think the last count was like over 1,000 1,000 distinct floodgates all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I mean, it makes sense. Like if you knew this was going to happen and you had the technology to do something about it, you wouldn't be like, all right, let's build one boat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, because you don't know where necessarily okay, we kind of know that it's going to hit over here, but you don't know what else is going to happen after that. I mean, it's just who knows. So you better make preparations all over the world.
But like I would be interested to see how the instructions to the guy who's supposed to survive change depending on where he was in relation to the impact. Like, what do you tell the guy that's like in Oregon? You're like, run.
Yeah.
Right? And then the guy that's in North Texas, you're like,
You know that crater that was made by the last one? Get to the bottom of that.
get to the bottom of that. That's right. Yeah. And hold on to that iron thing down there. 'Cause you're gonna do- Yeah. But anybody in North America, it's like,
Sorry, bro.
sorry, run. Try to find the guy down in Mexico that's making it. But yeah, go now.
Apparently, there was one guy who tried to hide behind a log at the bottom of a river. And now he's underneath the coal bay, under a mountain.
Oh, that's right.
We gotta.
The guy beneath Tabletop Mountain,
Yeah.
the big,
Yeah.
he's like, hide. Covers him in a mountain.
Sorry, folks. He didn't make it.
He had his little tools.
Yeah.
Oh man, you need to go back to like episode 5 to hear about that guy.
Yeah.
The Tabletop
Just
Mountain.
look up the Tabletop Mountain guy.
Yeah. All the guys under Tabletop Mountain, but yeah.
We're going to take one more break. It was a short segment, folks, but we went long on the last one. So we're take a short break here. We'll be back for the last dooski.
Could have used snakes.
Most meaningful decibels ever to be perceived by the human ear. Snake Bro!
Including those ones of the small child being spanked.
If that was in the
If
background.
that was in the background.
We'll get you through every cataclysm, all the earth and upheaval and destruction, demons and demonic possession, and all the good times too.
That's right. Meteors the size of school buses.
We're here for you. In the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. I will work on condensing that one down, compressing it down into something shorter. I'm already out of music. Still trying to finish my intro.
You always give me shit on the last one. You're like, I'm still doing my thing, man. Because I start coming in because I think you're done. Always give me shit on that.
No, it's cool. You just keep it up. It's part of the deal.
That's right. It's part of the deal.
I always have one that I kind of got down and then I just wing it
Yeah.
for one.
I winged
That
it
was
the
an
last
epic fail.
Winged it? Winged it?
Definitely winged.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, with half our arcs dive behind our backs just so we don't die. Snake Bros.
Yeah. As you all know, the last 4 or 5 episodes, I've been listening to this freaking book called Worlds in Collision by Neil Velikovsky. And the more recent stuff that I've been in this part of the book, he's talking about how the possibility that many of the ancient sites that we're looking at that are astronomically aligned were done so to try to, like, once they figured out, like after this cataclysm happened where, you know, we had some close encounter with one of the gods, right? Another planet or a comet the size of a planet. It came so close to us and it just like pulled us out of whatever orbit and whatever harmony we were in before, changed the tilt of the Earth, possibly sped it up, you know, increased our spin or whatever, increased our speed going around the sun or decreased or whatever, just totally changed everything. That after this was over, and you know, of course, in the Cataclysm is described darkness for multiple days at a time, dust so thick you can't see anything anywhere. So after the dust cleared, they're basically trying to figure out where they are in terms of our motion in comparison to the cosmos, right?
Yeah.
So they're looking at the patterns of background stars that they've recognized and seeing how they move through the sky. So they're trying to figure out where's the ecliptic. You know,
Didn't you say that they were making bets on where the sun would go?
Yeah. So they have this whole thing like, oh, you know, and like everybody bet. It's like pretty much in every direction. And then when it rose in the east, everyone was surprised, right? You know. So I guess through the long period of darkness, like they're all betting, like, where's the sun gonna come up?
Especially it was 26 years. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, but also it's like they're, you know, was it the Maya or the Aztecs or the Inca or whatever saying we're in the fifth sun?
Yeah. So
know?
this has happened
Right, so it's like
many times.
These ancient cultures that say this, and I think even in the ancient Egyptians have told what's his name, the Greek guy, the same thing.
Solon.
Yeah, Solon. They're like, yeah, you only remember one, but we
That's
remember
right.
5.
That's right. And then there's the Mayans said that we're in the fifth sun, and then there's the Egyptian god Tahoti has watched the sun rise in the east and in the west 5 times. Like,
right.
Switch 5 times. So yeah.
And so there's the idea of like just the whole polarity flipping, and we've talked about that. But in any case, the point of this part of the book is he's actually looking at sites, you know, ancient sites, and he's talking about specific ones. How they were, once they figured out what is, you know, what's the position, where is the sun rising, and then where is the equinox again, right? Like they find when they reach the equinox, and they make a marker, and they build these temples. A lot of the temples they're rebuilding. They're actually, you know, it was a legacy. They had these temples that had marked the motions and everything and the positions of everything before, and they were destroyed, and then they rebuilt all of them to the new positions, aligned to the new positions of everything. And it's like this kind of explains a little bit the obsession. With all of these motions of you know, it's like they're
Like why there are hinges everywhere.
Yeah. Their total obsession with all of this motion. And like one way I think that modern scholars look at it is that, well, they were trying to figure it out.
Right.
But it's like no, they had it figured out.
Yeah.
You know?
Like yes, but
again, in other words, like
For the fifth time.
when they went to build that hinge, they were doing it again, or they were doing it because they already understood astronomy.
Yeah.
And they're like, we need to figure out what the alignments are now.
right.
Because it's like all over the world, there's all of this stuff happening, and then all these buildings are being built to align. And it's like the idea that the Great Pyramid is like, it's sort of the culmination of all of this data that they were collecting from various places in the world where they were figuring all this stuff out. And they're like, okay, here's where the land masses are distributed now.
Yeah.
So they picked the site of Giza. Like, now this is me. I'm throwing this in here. This is
cool.
not in the book, but the idea is because, you know, they said the Great Pyramid, like around the Great Pyramid, if you look at the distribution of land masses around the Great Pyramid,
Yeah.
it's like pretty much in the center of all of the exposed terrain, right?
Yes.
So we're talking that wouldn't make any sense, and it seems like a crazy coincidence that it could have been built before the end of the last ice age.
Right.
Because if it was built before that, the land masses would have been totally different, and this
Right.
seems purposeful.
Yes.
This site that they picked. So it's like, anyway, there's that. Plus, it's aligned to the cardinal directions. So
Right.
if there
Which
was a
doesn't change.
shift,
Yeah.
then it wasn't.
Right.
They didn't build some building
Yeah, wow.
that after some cataclysm it lined it up.
We
right?
gotta make
That's
sure
just-
it lines up after the cataclysm.
No.
When we have to figure out what the cardinal directions are.
So we had talked briefly about the Temple of Karnak, right? Is
Yes.
that the Temple of Man,
Yeah.
or whatever. And there's this, supposedly they were digging down and they found this temple, or which one?
You're talking about the Temple of Seti. They call it the Temple of Seti II, and they found the Osirian.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was, and with the names, it's Seti's mortuary temple.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you look at the temple, like all mortuary temples, all Pharaoh's mortuary temples are long and straight. And they have this specific setup of pillars on the inside and then
Right,
open
right.
galleries and pillars and galleries. But his goes a certain amount, and then like right in the middle of a set of pillars, it just like and turns to the left.
Yeah.
Like it takes a
But
90
the
degree turn.
Osirian, they ran into the Osirian,
Yeah,
which is
so
way older.
This is not the way mainstream looks at it, though. But it's obvious to anyone who isn't blinded by like a priori ideas that the engineers who were digging for the foundations of Seti's temple ran into the top of the Osirian, which is 50, like the top of it is 50 feet below the ground level of the temple. Okay, it's buried like way down there, and so they're digging for the foundations, and they hit the top of it, and they're like, "Holy shit, this is like from the gods, right? It's ancient from the first time." So they actually, and Seti actually agreed to fuck up his mortuary temple, because this thing is so important.
Yeah.
Okay, now they connected it. There's a tunnel. There's a stairway in Seti's temple that goes down and has to go way, way down, 50 feet down, to where you can walk out into the bottom of the top of the Osirian, because it's got multiple levels underneath it. And now that just makes me think, like, I wonder if it was the top of Avara,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
because right
There's
now
multiple lines of thinking going on
yeah.
here.
Anyway, that's how that went.
But yeah, so I'm not thinking of that one, but the Temple of Man, I was getting
Yeah,
the two
Karnak.
confused.
Yeah,
Karnak is like, but he's kind of skewed. He's like,
Yeah, excuse.
he's kind of bent.
Yeah.
So this idea that Velikovsky is presenting is that some of the temples that were aligned in the previous time weren't completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And so when they go to rebuild, they preserve or refurbish the part that was still standing, but then they change the orientation
Yeah.
of the new one to reflect the new position of the Earth,
Right.
according to in comparison to the cosmos.
Or they use somehow the remnants of the old temple and incorporate it into it. Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
So that happened at Baalbek, because there's that.
Right. It has the same
yeah,
thing.
Yeah. The enclosure wall that isn't touching anything else of the whole thing, which has the massive trilithon
Right.
stones. Yeah.
It doesn't appear to have any purpose whatsoever. It's like
Yeah.
This is great, and he hasn't brought up Baalbek yet, but he's kind of been looking at this. As far as I remember from what I'm listening to, there are only a few specific sites, and mainly he's using ones that sort of make this point. He's not necessarily claiming that it's true, but what if it's it's kind of like, could this be what was going on?
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I thought was really interesting was a sundial, which they call a shadow clock, that was built in Egypt. What did you call the place? It's Fiam?
Yeah. Fayum. Yeah.
Fiam, Egypt. And it's got this, pedestal, basically, that's the sundial that casts the shadow, and it's got this massive stone down there with all these markings on it. And it's just, the shadow doesn't touch it. It like doesn't get close to it.
Yeah. It's totally.
And so they've done enough work to where they're not thinking that any of this stuff had been moved, right? They're trying to figure out, how did this clock work? Because they've already ruled out the idea that any of the stones have been moved to different positions. Okay, now they're trying to figure out why
they meant to put them.
does this shadow never touch these marks?
It's like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
Yes. So they start trying to figure out like, well, if you raise the top and you change the elevation of the top of the shadow casting stone, as far as I think I understand this, they're like you give it this height or whatever at this part of the day, but then you change the height throughout the day, like it will make this thing work, right? You have to raise and lower the top in order to make it work. But then they were like, but then they would have to have a real shadow clock.
Oh yeah.
In order to know if an hour passed, when to raise it, how high. So he just totally blows holes in it. But the idea is that is it declination? Is that what the word? Where if the axis was tilted further
Oh yeah.
or less, I can't remember which direction it is, then the shadow would actually be touching. You wouldn't have to raise it.
Wow.
So there's all these different theories, and like all these guys are arguing with each other about like where this thing. And Velikovsky's like, yeah, but you can just like you can see the problems in everybody's argument. But if you
poke holes.
You're right. But if you just imagine that that this clock was actually built, it's way older than they think it is.
Yeah, way older.
But it was actually built before this cataclysm that changed the orientation of the Earth and to the sun, then the clock would have been right. And so Russ and I were talking about it. It's like, man, could we use the problem with the clock to figure out
what the orientation of the Earth was before?
exactly? And then after you do that, then you can use that layout to try to figure out where other hidden ancient sites are.
Wow. Yeah, see, I hadn't heard that part yet.
Because like if they built something like the pyramid in the center of the land masses or something like that,
Yeah.
they
Yeah, we have all these ancient sites that are weirdly aligned.
yeah.
So if you got cart ruts and the spot aligns with
yeah, you know what I'm getting at. Extremely difficult problem to solve. But it's a cool idea.
and if the ruts point towards the and then your clock
Right.
shit. Man, that's badass. So there you go, folks.
But it's like they were doing the same thing at the Serpentine Mound.
2 clues in this show. Just this one show, there are 2 clues to find ancient sites that no one has ever found, full of, who knows, gold, full of seeds, longhead bones, gross, glowing windows, and so if you guys ever find anything, let us know. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we're giving you all of our great ideas here. So,
Man, that's dude, that's badass. Holy shit. That's a really good point.
yeah. So, where's the Stonehenge that doesn't? That all of the gates like don't point. Okay, so this is the other thing that I thought that I had. The Great Pyramid has these little tunnel. What are we called? The shafts.
The air shafts.
The air shafts. And there's this whole debate as to like two of the air shafts point to these stars, and it's like that makes it like only this old. But then these other two like point to this other thing, and it makes it totally different age. And I'm thinking, okay, dude, it's not about the. Okay, so if you correct for precession, then you get an alignment with 2 of them. The other 2 are not.
Yeah.
So then you have to continue to correct for precession to get to some completely different age.
Yeah.
So what if the 2 were made to show before and after?
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing: the 2 coming from the Queen's chamber that were closed off, so they don't
actually go out.
They turn.
They turn. Bam!
Bam. They change angle and angle.
See, Velikovsky was right. He wrote this book before Gantenbrink.
That's right.
The German engineer who designed the U-boat,
Oop-out robot.
robot to go up the shafts, and he found out.
I will send this Oop-out up these shafts. You would like it. You would like it. We will find these ancient sites.
Yeah, dude. So that's right. 2 of the shafts are straight lines,
And they're open.
and they're open,
And they go to the King's chamber. The
and
upper.
they actually align to things due to precession. You can back up and see where
now,
they
yeah.
align. It's like 4,000 years ago or whatever.
Right. And
the
the
time-
lower, more buried quote unquote smaller queen's chamber, the previous world. The
Both
shafts were
shafts.
closed off.
That's right.
And they go up in turn. Bam! Three ways to find ancient sites, folks, in this one show.
Dude. Okay,
Holy
so we
shit.
have to study the way they turn. Okay,
Blew our own minds.
check out Velikovsky's ideas, but seriously, like that is the way they turn could be a clue. Or they tried turning them and then they just was like, nope.
Yeah.
Or maybe they closed them to symbolize that was the Queen's Chamber was the old world.
That's what I'm saying. It's below the king's chamber. It's
Yeah.
buried.
It's buried. It's the old world.
It's the old world, and the shafts were closed off because it's the old world. It's closed off. I mean,
That's
if it's
freaking
purely
awesome.
symbolic,
That's the symbolism. Yeah,
Holy
it's so
shit.
badass. But if the angles of change, the turn of the angles
That's what
are
I'm saying.
accurate because
Yeah.
they were so freaking accurate about
right?
it.
If they once they had figured out, and they had to have by the time they built Giza to know that this is the center landmass.
They would have also known what the.
They knew what the old world was, and so they were like, it turned like this and like this,
This
right?
is where you have the 160 day or 360 days, 360 degrees in a circle, and then the 365.25 whatever
yeah,
days.
2, 4, 1, 4, 5.
The 5 days are unlucky.
Yep.
All of that
Are not real. Yeah.
Yes. So they have the sacred year and then the actual year.
That's right.
The year. Yeah. Dude,
Profane
that's-
year. Holy
So it's like
crap.
the Great Pyramid has that represented in it.
It embodies both worlds.
That's freaking awesome.
Wow. Queen's Chamber. It's the chamber of the previous world. Damn it, it's a way cooler name than Queen's Chamber.
Yeah.
Chamber of the Lost World. Dude,
That's awesome.
like Egypt, you want to get your tourism up? Chamber of the Lost World.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So that's just freaking brilliant. And we're working on this, our Hill Hinge project.
Yeah.
So, and I like when he was talking about the thing with the clock, like the shadow clock, I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
it was like we're watching. We're actually like we were making marks on this shadow on the equinox.
Yeah.
For the different hours of the day, we'd run up to the top of the hill and put some stones down or whatever so we could kind of see the direction it was going and everything. It's like,
Yeah.
you imagine like way in the future, the shadow's not even close. It's like, what the hell were they doing?
How could this be 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's more evidence towards that is that like what we were talking about last time, that they were recording extremely accurately all of these planets' motions in the sky.
Yeah.
And Venus is just not there.
Right.
And then they all talk about Venus as being like the new arrival, the new addition, all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
That's right.
And then so the idea of Mars as being the god of war.
Hello?
There were
Farewell.
like descriptions of like how he shows up and just like kicks ass.
Yeah.
So it's like there's this idea that after Venus rolls in and kind of like screws up everything and we start moving around, other things are moving around. We're all shifting. And
Right.
this is where the electric universe guys get in, get into the whole deal.
Because
with
Venus
it.
has a close encounter with Mars as well.
Yeah.
And throws him off orbit too, as well as us. And then
Yeah.
we have these massive conjunctions with Mars every 52 years. Yeah.
Right. And Mars is just getting like really close to us and it's causing all this mayhem and it's like he is the god of war. I was just like
Yeah.
visualizing this idea of like going back to this idea of gods, that word, that idea really being like these things in space.
Yeah.
And of course we would call that thing in space the war god because he's like he shows up and just bam, like massive lightning bolt strikes, like just carving the Grand Canyon and all this crazy shit happening.
Well, imagine a gigantic red orb hanging in the sky above your head.
Yeah.
It would be claustrophobia inducing. It would be terrifying because it would be
it's like slow.
it would look like it was about to fall on you. It would be enormous and covering half the sky. It would be this giant red sphere.
It's like, you know how you feel when there's like a major storm coming?
Yeah.
And the weather changes, the
Multiply that.
pressure changes, and you're just like, oh, I can feel it. And then the wind starts whipping up and everything, and you're just like, oh man. And it's like, we have houses made of bricks.
yeah.
Yeah. And you get inside and you like turn on the lights and it's like,
Right.
what you going on out there? and then the power goes off. And you're like, man, this is a pretty serious storm.
Yeah. Then your house
Imagine-
gets on fire and the flood comes. And you're like,
But imagine like a planet just getting larger and larger and larger in the sky, day after day after day, and eventually storms start happening, and they get and there's crazier and crazier and crazier, and you can see that what's going on, and it just gets it just doesn't stop.
Bolts between the two planets.
Yeah, and then eventually the lightning bolt just turns on, and it's like daylight.
yeah.
And who knows how long that happens?
Yeah.
A couple hours, maybe.
Yeah. So I've thought about this, the Eye of Ra, like the picture of that with the circle, and then you've got these curves around it. And if Venus came really close and had this massive encounter with Mars and blew off half of Mars's crust on one side, then it could have these things of dust all around it, and it was the Eye of Ra. And it got enormous in the sky, and there's these rings of dust over the top and over the bottom. And
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
go
yeah.
up. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And then there's that trench, right? That scar across the front of Mars or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a scrape mark, but when you're looking from space, but when you get way down in there, it's a canyon that's miles deep.
Yeah.
And
But
miles and
think
miles
about
long.
like any warrior, right?
Oh yeah, it's got a scar in his face.
They all have these scars on their face or their body or whatever, and it's just like, man, that is the
That's
quintessential like warrior mark. And so it's like it's getting close to us, and that maybe when it passed Venus, that was when
probably what caused it.
It got its scar, and we're watching that in the sky, like humans are seeing the encounter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Between Mars and
Pallas
Venus.
Athena, yeah.
And then then later on, Mars is like coming to us, and it's got this scarred face, and
Yeah,
he's like, I'm gonna kick your ass. But all this stuff is going on, and then it's like this. All of this like etched itself into the memory of mankind. This is the thing that Graham Hancock would say, our collective amnesia.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had recorded that memory. It's just deeply recessed in our
it's
subconscious.
We were traumatized.
But because amnesia is usually caused by this traumatic event.
Yeah.
So he would just say this like, our collective amnesia or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't really get it until listening to this Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision. And he's citing all of these ancient texts that are saying, these things about the comet this. And the translations are in various different symbolic forms that he's like, this is obviously a comet.
Yeah.
The serpent in the sky, for example.
Right. Dragons.
The bearded god.
Yeah.
He's got this long white beard or whatever, and he's in the sky. And it's like,
see, there is a bearded guy in the sky.
yes.
Take that, atheist. There is a bearded guy in the sky.
Damn right. Yep.
Sorry.
No, that's brilliant. I love it. That's what I'm talking about. It's like those type of connections.
Yeah.
And he's just throwing them at you, just left and right. And you get this. It's kind of like Stephen King horror.
Yeah.
Like
It grows and
you're reading the book and you're like, this isn't horror.
Yeah. Where's the
Where's all
scary
the ghosts and the scary stuff? But like 3/4 of the way through the book, you're terrified.
That's right.
You just suddenly realize it.
Yeah.
Like that's the way this is. He's just like throwing all this stuff at you, and eventually you get to a point where you're like, yeah, because that was a comet, and this is why we're all scared shitless of comets. The comet is always the bad omen,
The harbinger of doom.
Yeah. It's just on and on, all these connections. It's man, it's really great, but
And terrifying. Because we're at the antipode of the precessional clock, where it's supposed to happen again.
yeah. But of course, Venus shows up as basically like almost like a rogue planet.
Yeah.
And we took it in. And so
Yeah.
now everything's normalized. There was this age of chaos
Yeah.
where
That's one of his
the
books.
human race. Oh, really?
Yeah, one of his, after Earth and Upheaval, he wrote Ages in Chaos.
Okay.
Yeah. See?
I'm just a regular freaking author. You know what I'm saying?
Mind reader.
But yeah, there was, and it was like etched into the mind, the collective mind of mankind. That there was. This is where I think this whole idea of this pantheon and this whole this whole, all of the drama that they go through. It's like
Yeah.
they are just trying to record this crazy shit that happened with planets in the sky that we witnessed and almost killed all of us. This is where you get the idea that the war of gods and men. It's like, you know, hurling humans was like a reality. It wasn't that some giant guy with a lightning bolt in his hand came down and raised an army of men and fought and they all died. It's sort of like that is like the reenactment of what really happened. Like the gods were fighting. These planets were, some rogue planet rolled in, threw everything out of balance, and the casualties were off the charts on Earth.
Yeah.
Men died.
The impacts made people fly. And
We
that was
were
really-
at war with the gods.
That's right.
And we had no weapon that could touch them. Like we were
That's right.
at their mercy.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yep. Man.
And so it all
And it would be exactly the same now with all of our technology. If
exactly.
the
Yeah.
planet started rolling around like crazy, we would be.
Yeah.
It would be the same.
Yep.
So you can imagine that this previous age could have been as higher technology than us, or maybe it technologically advanced on a different line of technology.
Yeah.
And they would have been wiped out, just like
Utterly, yeah. And then you throw in this idea of like the electric universe type of stuff, and that gravity is part of this electrical connection, right? So this our advanced culture, we put all these space stations up in there, and then some massive electrical body comes by and just boom, we're all gonna get sucked into some plasma ray that's gonna like everything we put, every satellite we put up there is gonna get just
it'll be vaporized.
completely vaporized into a plasma.
Except for the one that'll be the next Black Knight.
Yeah. Well, our probes that we send out will be okay. But I'm just saying, like,
Well, if all the planets start wandering, the probes are going to be knocked out of orbits too, because they're around the other planets.
that's true. That's true.
But like the Voyagers that are left the solar system,
That's what I'm talking about.
they're good.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But like, you can
Make
imagine-
sure. Hey, look, guys, just make sure to play that golden record.
That's
when you
right.
find it, because we used to be here. I promise.
That reminds me of The Star. That story. Old Arthur C. Clarke story, folks. Look it up. Called The Star. It's a short story. Take you 10 minutes to read. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it for this show.
Yep.
3 hints on how to find ancient riches.
Yep. Ancient worlds in collision.
Or old rotten sperm eggs. You know, whatever. Thanks, show's over. Anyway, let's see.
You can get a hold of us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. You can check us out at brothersoftheserpent.com.
That's right. I really got to get this down. Yeah. So, and again, I'm putting a tracker system on the link. So if you guys when you go to download the show, it's going to do a redirect. So don't worry about that. It's not some secret. It's just me trying to figure out how many people are downloading it.
Yep.
All 5. So
I think this is the first show that I've done that I haven't actually smoked a smoke.
Yeah.
The whole time.
oh, well, I had smokes during the break, but
No, but I haven't. But I've had this vape.
yeah. We've been only vaping in the cube.
Yeah. We're trying to market ourselves to a more
Hipster crowd.
hipster crowd. It's like,
Yeah, that's right, you hipsters.
I am wearing a low-cut V-neck right now, and I have a mustache.
So, thank you very much to Kyle Allen and Ty Stone for all the music. Thanks to Brett England for keeping us on the straight and narrow in terms of the truth. And thanks to me for having all the content. And thanks to Ahura Mazda for saving our freaking lives way back in the day, except for that one guy under the mountain.
Yeah.
That's about it, guys. Thank you very much for listening. All you listeners out there.
Didn't make it, guys.
He didn't make it. I think that's about it.
Thanks.
Yeah, so next time you have giant gods in the sky, bearded gods in the sky, just find yourself some snakes.